The moment that shattered my world came wrapped in pale pink paper, tucked away in a jacket pocket. Isn't it strange how life's biggest revelations often arrive in the most ordinary moments? Picture this: a quiet Sunday afternoon, sunlight painting golden stripes across our bedroom floor. I'm doing what I've done countless Sundays before, sorting through our laundry while Jim works in the living room, his keyboard providing a familiar soundtrack to our domestic routine. 3 years together, and these simple moments still filled my heart with contentment. Or at least, they did until today. The paper crinkled beneath my fingers as I reached into his jacket pocket. I remember thinking how unusual it was, this delicate pink sheet with its fancy floral borders, so different from our plain white printer paper. My heart did a little dance when I recognized Jim's handwriting. You see, Jim was never one for handwritten notes. "Why write letters when we have phones?" he'd always say with a laugh. But this letter wasn't meant for me. "My dearest Sarah," it began, and just like that, the world shifted beneath my feet. Sarah, his new marketing director, the one whose name had been peppered through our dinner conversations, casual mentions that now felt like red flags I'd missed. The words flowed across the page like poison honey, beautiful and devastating. He wrote about her smile, how it lit up his world, about stolen moments over coffee that had become the highlight of his days, about feelings he couldn't control, growing stronger with each passing moment. Each word was a knife, twisting deeper into my heart. The sunlight that had felt so warm moments ago now seemed to mock me with its cheerfulness. From the living room came the steady rhythm of Jim's typing. The same fingers that had written this love letter to another woman were now probably sending me another text full of heart emojis and dinner plans. Our life together stared back at me from the dresser, a museum of moments frozen in time. Beach vacations with sandy smiles, Christmas dinners with our families, quiet Sunday mornings like this one. In each photo, his eyes crinkled with joy as he held me close. Now I wondered if those smiles had hidden secrets, if his heart had been searching for something or someone else all along. The buzz of my phone cut through my thoughts. "Want to order pizza for lunch?" Jim's text read, so mundane it felt almost cruel. Just a wall away, he sat typing, probably smiling at his screen, while I stood here holding the pieces of my shattered reality. How many lunch dates had we shared where his mind wandered to Sarah? How many times had he crafted loving words for her while sitting across from me at our favorite restaurants? My fingers moved on autopilot, pulling up Instagram and typing Sarah's name. Each photo felt like a punch to the gut. There she was, perfectly polished, elegantly professional, wearing success like a designer coat. I paused at a photo of her outside Jim's office building, manicured fingers wrapped around a coffee cup from the daily grind. The same cafe Jim had suddenly couldn't live without, though he'd spent years bragging about his home-brewed coffee. The clues had been there, scattered like breadcrumbs I'd been too trusting to follow. Those urgent late meetings that kept multiplying on his calendar. The way he'd squirm slightly and change topics whenever Sarah's name came up. Even his new morning routine, leaving earlier to beat traffic, now seemed like neon signs I'd willfully ignored. I'd stayed quiet, telling myself that trust meant not asking questions. Now that trust felt like a fool's choice. With trembling hands, I returned the letter to its hiding place, folding it precisely along its original creases. My body moved through the motions of sorting laundry, lights, darks, delicates, while my mind spun with questions and possibilities. The sound of Jim's laughter drifted in from the living room, once a melody that brightened my day, now a haunting reminder of what might be slipping away. I grabbed my phone again, opening my chat with Emma. The cursor blinked at me expectantly, but the words wouldn't come. How do you tell your best friend that your world is unraveling? That the man you thought you knew might be falling in love with someone else? That you found evidence of his wandering heart between the folds of his dirty laundry on an otherwise ordinary Sunday morning? Imagine finding out your boyfriend loves someone else through a letter in his dirty laundry. The absurdity of it almost made me laugh. Or was it a sob catching in my throat? The washing machine's steady hum felt like a ticking clock, counting down the moments until I'd have to walk into that living room and face him with this burnt. The thought of sharing lunch with him, watching him eat pizza and chat about his day while carrying this knowledge, it made my lungs forget how to breathe. A ray of sunlight caught my promise ring, making it sparkle innocently on my finger. That second anniversary night came rushing back. The candlelight, his nervous smile as he slipped it on, his words about our future together. Had Sarah already been on his mind even then? Had he been dreaming of her while making promises to me? My hands kept moving, sorting clothes into piles like a robot running on autopilot. The laundry basket emptied, but my head filled up with questions, each one heavier than the last. 3 years of morning kisses, shared dreams, and trusted secrets, all now cast in shadows by a pink piece of paper. I found myself in our home office, staring blankly at my laptop screen when a notification made my heart jump. Sarah's new Instagram story. My finger trembled over the icon before I clicked, knowing it would hurt but unable to stop myself. There she was, at that same cafe near their office, coffee in hand with a caption that read, "Perfect start to a perfect day," posted at 8:15 a.m., right when Jim claimed he had those important morning meetings. With shaking hands, I pulled out my diary from the desk drawer. I'd started it months ago, jotting down Jim's little changes like precious memories. Now each entry read like evidence in a case I never wanted to build. March 15th. Jim excitedly joining the office book club, Sarah's book club. April the 3rd. His sudden interest in upgrading his wardrobe after Sarah's casual compliment about his presentation outfit. Every page told a story of his heart slowly drifting away while I watched, blind to the signs. My phone buzzed again. "Working late tonight? Important client meeting," Jim's text read. The third time this week, he'd used those exact words. Something inside me snapped. I found myself opening our building's security app, a feature we'd barely noticed when we moved in. Funny how desperation makes you remember the smallest details. The security app painted a damning picture, his car leaving at dawn and sneaking back past midnight. Strange how these client meetings never appeared on his shared calendar. My hands seemed to move on their own as I dove deeper into Sarah's social media. Her LinkedIn activity told its own story, a digital trail of likes and comments on Jim's posts, each one another crack in my heart. "Your presentation on market trends was brilliant. Coffee tomorrow to discuss more?" Her comment from yesterday sat there, mocking me. Jim's eager reply below, "Looking forward to it." Such simple words, hiding such complex betrayals. When Emma called, her voice carried that best friend concern that breaks through any pretense. "Hey, you've been quiet today. Everything okay?" As I tried to explain, memories rushed in like a flood, every casual mention of Sarah's name over dinner. Sarah suggested this great restaurant. Sarah's ideas are really innovative. Sarah has such a fresh perspective. Each memory now felt like a warning bell I'd ignored. "Have you noticed anything different about Jim lately?" I managed to ask. Emma's pause spoke volumes before her words did. I didn't want to say anything, but at the office party last month, they did seem quite friendly. Emma worked in the same building. She'd had a front row seat to what I'd been blind to. After hanging up, I tortured myself with last month's office party photos. Now I couldn't unsee it. The lingering glances, Sarah's body angled toward Jim in every group shot, his hand resting just a moment too long on her shoulder. The evidence had been hiding in plain sight, captured in pixels and megabytes. Then came the email that felt like the final piece of the puzzle, a company announcement about an upcoming conference. Featured speakers, Jim Harrison and Sarah Chin. 3 days together in another city. The same business trip he'd mentioned over toast and coffee, as if he was just telling me about the weather. My feet carried me to our bedroom closet, his cologne wrapping around me like a bitter reminder as I opened his side. There, tucked away with his important documents, I found them. Receipts from romantic restaurants I'd never seen, movie tickets for shows we hadn't watched together, and a jewelry store receipt from just last week. The final blow came from my phone. A text from Mom asking why Jim had canceled our regular Sunday dinner for plans I knew nothing about. Time felt frozen as I sat on our bed, the same spot where I'd discovered the letter hours ago. Evening shadows stretched across the room like dark fingers, pointing at all the lies I'd finally uncovered. It's funny how you can spend 3 years building a life with someone, only to realize the foundation was cracking all along. Our shared photo album told its own story now. I noticed things I'd been blind to before. The changing light in Jim's eyes, that smile that never quite reached them anymore. Those beach photos from 2 months ago showed him constantly glued to his phone. Work emails, he'd claimed. Amazing how 3 little dots could hide so many lies. The sound of his keys in the door made my heart jump into my throat. Jim was home early, something that never happened anymore. My fingers flew across the keyboard, erasing the digital breadcrumbs of my investigation. "Babe, you home?" his voice called out, warm and familiar. How could he sound so normal when he'd set our world on fire? I heard him in the kitchen, probably making his fancy new coffee, the kind Sarah had introduced him to. Even the way he drank coffee wasn't his own anymore. Standing before our bedroom mirror, I practiced keeping my face neutral, but the woman staring back looked different. Gone was the trusting girlfriend, replaced by someone with shadows in her eyes and secrets in her heart. A notification lit up my phone. Friends planning a weekend getaway. Jim's response was already there. "Sorry, can't make it. Work commitment." Another perfectly crafted lie to cover his conference with Sarah. He was building a house of cards, and I was watching each piece fall into place. The fading daylight seemed to whisper that it was time. Time to face the truth. Time to stop pretending. That pink letter wasn't just beautiful words on expensive paper. It was a map showing me where Jim's heart had wandered while I wasn't looking. While I'd been dreaming of our forever, he'd been writing poems about his new beginning. His footsteps on the stairs sounded like a ticking clock. Each step brought us closer to the moment where pretense would shatter. 1,000 questions swirled in my mind, but what was the point? The answers were already written in his actions, in every small betrayal I'd finally pieced together. When the bedroom door opened, I saw him with new eyes. "Everything okay? You're usually downstairs by now," he asked, concern painting his voice. But now I could see what I'd been missing. The guilty flicker in his eyes, the careful way he kept his distance. The truth had been performing right in front of me, waiting for me to finally buy a ticket to the show. Morning arrived like any other, except nothing was the same. My coffee trembled in my shaking hands as I sat at our kitchen counter, waiting. Jim was still sleeping off another late client meeting, the same one that perfectly matched the restaurant location in Sarah's Instagram story. The familiar sound of his alarm floated down from our bedroom, followed by his morning routine. Each sound now felt like a countdown to confrontation. My heart hammered against my ribs as his footsteps descended the stairs. He appeared in the doorway wearing one of his new suits, the ones he'd bought after Sarah's offhand compliment about his style. "Morning, babe," he said casually, reaching for his coffee mug like this was just another day, like he hadn't poured his heart out to another woman on pink paper just yesterday. I watched him add sugar to his coffee, a new habit he'd picked up from her, another piece of himself he'd changed. "We need to talk," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. He barely glanced up. "Can it wait? I have an early meeting." "With Sarah?" The name fell between us like a grenade. His hand froze mid-air, coffee threatening to spill. "What?" I slid my phone across the counter, his company's public calendar glowing accusingly. "Your presentation with Sarah Chin, right? The one you've been preparing for during all these late-night meetings? The color drained from his face like water down a drain. How did you... he started, but I cut him off. It's amazing what you discover when you finally open your eyes, like love letters in jacket pockets. The coffee mug hit the counter with a sharp crack that matched the breaking in my voice. You went through my pockets? His accusation came out weak, defensive. I was doing your laundry, like I always do, like I did last Sunday, and the Sunday before that, while you were writing love poems to your marketing director. He ran his fingers through his hair. That nervous gesture I used to find so charming now looked rehearsed, like everything else about him. It's not what you think. Really? My voice remained eerily calm. So you didn't write about how her smile brightens your darkest days? How she's awakened feelings you thought were lost? That letter, I can explain. I cut through his are just friends. I felt a laugh bubble up, bitter as black coffee. Friends don't write love letters, Jim. Friends don't cancel dates with their girlfriend to have secret dinners. His shock morphed into defensiveness. You've been investigating me? No, I've been waking up. Those restaurant receipts you hide? They're like a map of Sarah's Instagram posts. Every late meeting lines up perfectly with her stories. You were careful about everything except social media. He collapsed into a kitchen chair, the mask of innocence finally slipping. I didn't mean for this to happen. But it did happen, I said softly. While I was here planning our future, you were falling in love with someone else, right under my nose. It's complicated. No, it's actually very simple. You're in love with Sarah. Your letter spelled it out in perfect detail. I never wanted to hurt you, Dash. His voice cracked. But you did. My voice finally breaking. Every time you lied about where you were. Every time you came home wrapped in her perfume. Every time you casually dropped her name at dinner, pretending she was just a colleague. He reached for my hand across the counter. I pulled back like his touch would burn. Don't. We can work through this, he pleaded. What we have is special, Dash. What we had, I corrected him. Past tense. Just like your letter said. You found something new with her. Something that makes everything else feel like settling. That's not fair, Dash. Fair? Anger finally crept into my voice. Was it fair to keep me hanging while you explored your feelings for her? Was it fair to make me look like a fool in front of everyone who could see what was happening? His phone buzzed, Sarah's name lighting up the screen. Their morning coffee date, right on schedule. He reached for the phone, then stopped, guilt written across his face. Go ahead, I said. Answer it. Tell her you'll be late for coffee. Tell her something came up at home. Add it to your growing list of lies. I never meant to fall in love with her, to write her love letters, to plan a future with her while pretending to build one with me. Which part didn't you mean, Jim? He stood up, frustration radiating off him. You're not letting me explain. Because there's nothing to explain. Your letter said everything. Your actions showed everything. I was just too blind to see it. His phone buzzed again. Sarah, still waiting. Even during our breakup, she was there, an invisible presence between us. I'm moving out, I said quietly. Today, while packing my laptop and work documents from our home office felt like closing a book mid-chapter. This room had held so many late-night dreams about our future business ventures. Now those dreams felt like borrowed stories from someone else's life. My passport lay hidden behind vacation photos in the drawer. Snapshots of us smiling in different places, wearing happiness like a mask. Had he been thinking of her even then, while holding me close for the camera? The photos stayed behind. The passport came with me. Only the kitchen remained. Hunger hadn't crossed my mind since finding that letter, even though my stomach had been empty for hours. Standing in our kitchen, soon to be just his, I reached for my favorite coffee mug. It was a simple blue ceramic thing, but it was purely mine, untainted by our shared memories. The fridge hummed softly, still holding the pasta from what I now knew was our last real dinner together. I stared at those leftovers, wondering how long they'd sit there marking time like the end of our story. The key bowl by the door caught my eye, a jumble of house keys, car keys, and that little silver heart keychain he'd given me on our first anniversary. "Forever yours," he'd said. The door closed behind me with a soft click that echoed through my heart. The hallway stretched before me like a path into the unknown, each step away from apartment 1507 carrying me toward a different future. The elevator's cheerful ding felt oddly inappropriate as it carried me down from the life I'd built 15 floors up. Through my car's rearview mirror, I watched our building shrink, the afternoon sun glinting off what used to be our window, now just his. Up there, fragments of our life together would linger in empty spaces and half-vacant closets, but down here on the street, the world was already pulling me forward. Emma's car waited patiently ahead, her brake lights glowing like beacons guiding me to safety. As I pulled away from the curb, I realized that sometimes the hardest decisions make themselves. We just have to be brave enough to listen when truth whispers its difficult wisdom. The first week at Emma's passed in a haze of numbness. After blocking Jim's number, my phone fell silent, though he tried reaching me through work email, messages I filtered into a folder simply labeled past. HR processed my resignation without fuss, another chapter closing quietly. Emma's spare room became my refuge, its blank walls and simple furnishings so different from the home I'd left behind. Each night, I'd hear her gentle movements in the kitchen, followed by the soft clink of a teacup being placed outside my door, her way of saying, "I'm here," without words. 3 days after I left, Sarah posted their first photo together, a seemingly innocent office group picture where they stood just a fraction too close. The comments section bloomed with congratulations from coworkers who'd watched our relationship unravel from the sidelines. I hit the unfollow button on every office connection that day, erasing their digital presence from my life. My parents called daily, Mom's voice carrying both worry and a hint of relief. "I never liked how he changed this past year," she finally confessed, giving voice to what everyone had seen except me. Dad cut through the gentleness with his trademark honesty. "Baby girl, you need someone who wakes up every morning choosing you, not someone who picks you like a backup plan." His words stung like antiseptic on a fresh cut, painful but healing. Life had its own plans for mending my broken pieces. The job offer landed in my inbox like a lifeline, a competitor company, better title, bigger paycheck. "We've had our eyes on your work," they said, making me wonder if sometimes the universe conspires to push us toward better paths. 1 week after leaving, I found myself driving past our old building, drawn there like a moth to a familiar flame. His parking spot stood empty, but Sarah's social media told the story I didn't want to see, them laughing at our favorite weekend cafe, creating new memories over the ashes of mine. They were already rewriting our story with different characters. Emma discovered me in her kitchen at 3 a.m., tears falling onto my phone screen as I scrolled through memories that now felt like photos of strangers. She didn't try to fix anything with words, just sat beside me, her shoulder touching mine, reminding me that some friendships grow stronger in life's earthquakes. When the sun peeked through her kitchen window, I finally found the strength to delete every picture of Jim from my phone, each tap feeling like closing a door. His mother's call caught me off guard. "He's making the biggest mistake of his life," she said, her voice heavy with a mother's disappointment. "This isn't the man I raised." I thanked her for her love, but gently closed that door too. Some bridges need to stay in ashes to prevent us from crossing back. The office goodbye felt like a strange play where everyone knew their lines except me. Sarah's convenient sick day spoke volumes. My coworkers hugged me tight, their eyes carrying messages their lips wouldn't speak. Until one brave soul whispered, "She did this exact same thing at her last job." Funny how history loves to repeat its performance for those who missed the first show. My new apartment felt like taking the first deep breath after being underwater for months. It was smaller than our old place, but it was mine, every corner fresh and untouched by broken promises. The plant I'd rescued from our old life chose this moment to burst into bloom, as if celebrating our shared freedom. When Jim's letter arrived at my new office, thanks to a well-meaning but misguided mutual friend, it carried the promise ring and words heavy with regret. The ring found its new home in a desk drawer. Some jewelry boxes are better left closed. My new team embraced me without knowing my story, and I found myself speaking in meetings with a strength that surprised me. Perhaps heartbreak had burned away my fear of standing tall. Emma turned furnishing my new place into an adventure in self-discovery. "You're going through a metamorphosis," she observed, as we hung vibrant curtains that would have made Jim cringe. Every choice I made was a deliberate step away from my old life, bold colors replacing safe neutrals, modern lines erasing classic curves. The universe has a twisted sense of timing. 1 month after leaving, I spotted them at a restaurant. They didn't notice me, lost in their own world. Sarah's face mirrored my old expressions of adoration, and I wondered if she knew she was looking at her future past. I paid my bill quietly and slipped away, leaving them to their borrowed happiness. My therapist explained grief like ocean waves. Some days they crash over you, others they merely lap at your feet. The Sunday mornings hit hardest, those quiet moments when muscle memory expected shared laundry loads and coffee-flavored kisses. But there were also days when relief washed over me, grateful for escaping a love that had rotted from the inside out. Sarah's assistant, Maria, became an unexpected ally. "They fight all the time," she confided over lunch. "He stares at his phone while she's talking, just like he did with you." I had to smile at how patterns dance through relationships, changing partners but keeping the same steps. 6 weeks marked the end of the nightmares. No more reaching across sheets for a ghost. No more waking up with tears already falling. The empty side of my bed transformed from a void into a canvas of possibilities. I started sleeping diagonally, stretching out like a starfish, reclaiming space that should have been mine all along. The new company became my lighthouse in the storm. My fresh perspective brought success after success, 3 major campaigns in just 2 months. Meanwhile, whispers reached me about my old position at Jim's company sitting empty. Sarah's attempts to install her friend blocked by the board. Life has a way of balancing scales when we least expect it. When his boxes arrived, delivered by couriers wearing pressed uniforms and professional smiles, I found pieces of myself I'd forgotten existed. Books with my notes in the margins, clothes that carried the scent of our old home, photographs that felt like they belonged to someone else's life. The entire lot went to donation without a second glance. Someone else's new beginning was waiting in those boxes. Emma took it upon herself to play matchmaker, but I declined every offer. "It's too soon," became my mantra, though the truth was simpler. I was falling in love with my own company. I discovered the joy of dining alone, the peace of watching movies without commentary, the freedom of weekend adventures with only my thoughts for company. Jim's final attempt at contact came through LinkedIn, a sterile message about old files that needed transferring. I let my assistant handle it with professional courtesy. Some doors are better left closed, even when someone knocks politely. Meanwhile, my new apartment bloomed with life. Plants colonized every windowsill, art claimed blank walls, and books I'd always dreamed of reading found their home on new shelves. Each edition felt like another step toward the person I was becoming. The morning I woke up without him being my first thought felt ordinary until evening, when I realized what had happened. Progress, I learned, doesn't come with fanfare. It slips in quietly through the back door of routine. When Sarah updated her relationship status, followed by Jim a day later, the office gossip reached me through well-meaning former colleagues. They'd moved in together, starting fresh in a new place. I offered a silent wish for their happiness, knowing some lessons need to be learned firsthand. 3 months into my new job, I stood accepting my promotion. catching my reflection in the office windows. The woman staring back seemed like a stranger, confident, strong, unbound. Heartbreak had been my chisel, carving away everything that wasn't truly me until the real version emerged. The last photo of us lived in my desk drawer for months, like a time capsule of a different life. When I finally pulled it out, ready to face whatever emotions it might trigger, I was surprised by what I found. The photo revealed two strangers frozen in a moment of ignorant bliss, unaware that love sometimes teaches its hardest lessons through goodbye. I tucked it away with the promise ring, museum pieces from a story I'd outgrown. When Mom called about Christmas, her voice was gentle. "Just family this year, sweetheart." In my childhood bedroom, surrounded by memories that existed long before Jim, I understood how some endings create space for the life that's meant to find you. Half a year after walking away, I sat in my corner office, watching sunlight dance across the city skyline. Everything had changed. The view, the company, even me. My team had just landed our third major client of the quarter, and success, as it turned out, was the sweetest form of moving on. The universe has a way of upgrading your life once you stop accepting less than you deserve. My apartment had transformed from a shelter into a sanctuary. Gone were the safe beige walls and careful choices. Now bold artwork commanded attention, and vibrant colors brought every room to life. The rescued plant from my old life had flourished into a miniature forest across my living room windows. Like me, it just needed the right environment to truly bloom. That morning's surprise came in the form of an industry award nomination for my latest marketing campaign. Ironically, the same one Jim's company had dismissed when Sarah stepped into my old role. Life had a peculiar way of bringing things full circle, though this time, I was standing on higher ground. Over our weekly coffee at our new favorite spot, Better Beans, Zero Ghosts, Emma studied my face with a knowing smile. "You're glowing," she said simply. "Freedom looks beautiful on you." When my phone buzzed with a LinkedIn notification showing Sarah had viewed my profile, it barely registered. Later, whispers reached me about trouble in their paradise. History was doing its favorite dance, repeating itself with new partners, but I felt only a distant sympathy, like watching storm clouds over someone else's horizon. My dating app stayed active, not from fear of loneliness, but because I'd learned to enjoy the slow dance of possibility. Evenings filled themselves naturally now. Yoga classes where I finally mastered crow pose, writing workshops where I rediscovered my voice, and lingering dinners with friends who'd held my hand through the darkness. Love, I realized, wasn't just about romance, it was about all the ways life could fill your heart when you opened it wide enough. At work, my department had become the company's rising star, doubling in size as young professionals sought us out by name. During presentations, I'd catch glimpses of myself in the conference room glass, confident, focused, complete. That woman who'd once cried over betrayal seemed like a character from someone else's story. When Mom called with neighborhood gossip about Jim's company losing major clients and Sarah jumping ship to a competitor, I listened with the polite interest you'd give to a stranger's tale. Their drama belonged to a different book entirely, one I'd finished reading months ago. Later that week, my therapist smiled as she said the words I'd once thought impossible. "I think you're ready to fly solo now. You've rebuilt yourself from the foundation up," my therapist observed, her words echoing truth. "And this time, you've used materials that last." She was right. Every piece of my new life had been carefully chosen, not borrowed from someone else's blueprint of happiness. Like building a house knowing exactly which rooms you'll need. The industry conference arrived with perfect timing. The same event where Jim and Sarah had been scheduled to present together now featured me as the keynote speaker. Standing at the podium, confidence wrapped around me like a well-tailored suit, I spotted them in the audience. They sat with empty seats between them, both wearing expressions of discomfort. I lifted my gaze to the back row and delivered my speech with the strength of someone who had nothing left to prove. At the reception, Jim materialized by my table, looking worn down by time or perhaps consequences. "You're doing well," he offered, his voice carrying the weight of missed opportunities. I returned a polite smile, excused myself, and glided toward my colleagues. Some conversations belong in the past, like outdated software that no longer serves its purpose. My new office pulsed with creative energy, ideas bouncing off walls, laughter echoing through corridors, projects flowing like well-conducted orchestras. I'd built the environment I'd always dreamed of creating at Jim's company, but now it was purely mine. The ring box and old photos had found new homes through donation, like anchors I'd finally released to sail toward open seas. In their place, I bought myself a new ring, a simple band that whispered promises I intended to keep to myself. When Emma's wedding invitation arrived, addressed to just me, no plus one, I felt her thoughtfulness. She'd hesitated, knowing Jim and Sarah would attend through mutual connections. I RSVP'd immediately, because true friendship deserves celebration, regardless of the guest list's awkward geometry. My mornings transformed into peaceful rituals. Instead of manufacturing coffee for two, I savored my tea on the balcony, watching the sun paint the sky in colors that belonged solely to me. The silence that once echoed with absence now hummed with possibility. When the industry magazine featured my latest campaign on their cover, they asked about my meteoric rise. I spoke of reinvention and resilience, carefully crafting a narrative that stood on its own merit, without need for footnotes about past relationships or companies. Life's irony showed itself again when Sarah's assistant reached out, seeking escape routes from a familiar situation. I helped her find a position at a respected firm, breaking a cycle that didn't need to claim another victim. My role had shifted from survivor to guide, showing others the path to better horizons. When my parents first visited my new place, Dad took in everything: the awards lining my walls, the jungle of thriving plants, the peaceful energy that permeated every corner. "This space," he said, gesturing to encompass not just the room, but perhaps the life I'd built. "This is more you than anywhere you've ever been." Mom's embrace lasted longer than usual, wrapping me in understanding of both how far I'd come and how much strength it took to get here. Driving past our old apartment building for the last time, I noticed workers replacing the entrance signage. New management, new era. This time, I didn't feel the magnetic pull to look up at our old windows. Some places, like some memories, are meant to stay in the rearview mirror. 1 year after finding that life-changing letter, I sat in my home office, sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows as I wrote in my journal, a healing practice I'd adopted after walking away. Today's entry flowed simply. I'm grateful for that letter now. It wasn't a bomb that destroyed my life. It was a key that unlocked my prison. My calendar brimmed with purpose: keynote speeches, client meetings, dinners with friends who'd walked through fire with me. Life had expanded beyond the suffocating borders of a relationship that was never meant to be my final destination. The city sparkled below as I wrapped up a late-night project, its lights dancing like stars fallen to earth. No messages asking when I'd be home. No one